The Chargers and Packers were humiliated this weekend by their opponents, and they've got nobody to blame but their quarterbacks. Well, nobody might be a stretch, but undoubtedly the deciding factor of both these games, which ended their seasons, was Justin Herbert or Jordan Love's performance. So let's get into it, talking about why this happened, what their opponents did, and what the path looks like going forward. Starting with Herbert, you can try and hand wave the first playoff collapse against the Jaguars, say, oh, well, that's coaching, even though he played terribly in the second half. Put it on anyone else from Herbert. Fine. Do that. Cannot handwave how terribly he played in this one. 4 interceptions, 3 of which were his fault. A bad performance, which undoubtedly shakes the confidence of all those diehard experts who have been hyping up Herbert as a consensus top 5 quarterback, a guy worthy of being in the conversations with the Lamars, the Allens, the Joe Burrows of the world. He's just not quite that guy. Still a phenomenally talented quarterback, still a great player, but if you cannot perform in the playoffs, that has to affect how we view you as a player. It's not going to factor into all pros, MVPs, regular season, stuff like that, but it changes the public perception. It knocks you down a few pegs, and you got to ask yourselves, is this going to be the case going forward? Was this just a one-off, even though it's happened before? Do you have a ton of faith in Herbert? Do you try and trade him for J.J. McCarthy? As a Vikings fan, I would not accept that trade. I am very comfortable with JJ. Now, obviously, there are other issues which need to be addressed. Outside of Ladd McConkey, the receiving room is not great. Quentin Johnston can have a role somewhere, but it cannot be as a little shallow, technical route runner guy. He's got to just be allowed to run go balls. They need a better tight end. They need a better wide receiver, too, and they need to fix the entirety of the interior offensive line. All those things can be true, and Herbert can still stink at the same time. The Chargers have a path going forward. They are not moving off Herbert, but this was a discouraging performance. You do not like seeing your season end like this.
I don't want to tear down Justin Herbert immediately with my take on the game. I think hindsight 2020, we might have been a little bit dismissive of just how good this Texans defense is. Between Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, what they were able to do from a pass rush perspective. They only sacked Justin Herbert 4 times, but they were getting after him all game long. And then on the Chargers side of things,
in our hubris, I'll jump in off that and say, in our hubris of talking about, oh, the Chargers have great tackles, we forgot the fact there's this thing called a stunt which exists, where they in fact can just go up against the guards.
And I think we might have overlooked the quality of coach that DeMeco Ryans is, and we kind of just chucked Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers up to having the significant better head coach and having the coaching advantage. I don't think that gap was clearly that wide, and because DeMeco Ryans is such a good head coach and a defensive mind with all the talent they have on defense, they took advantage of where the Chargers were weak on the offensive side of the ball. The Chargers offense, from a skilled position perspective, really only have Ladd McConkey as a high-quality receiving threat, and you have Quentin Johnston, who, if you have Ladd McConkey, maybe a true number 1 outside threat, Quentin Johnston's a really nice piece if he's your third option that can be more of a utility piece where you're just taking shots to him deep down the field, and he has a more defined role. But when you're asking him to do multiple different things at the wide receiver position, I don't think he's that high quality of a player, but still, like you said, I think he can be a productive piece in this offense moving forward.
The Chargers fans are not going to like hearing you say that. They want him shot off a cliff or thrown into those wildfires.
Unfortunately, I do think he has a role in an offense somewhere. Not as the number 2 guy.
The top comment's going to be, yeah, in the XFL. You know what you're doing here, right? You can't throw out these vague statements to these animals. What we're glossing over is the fact that if Herbert had just accepted more of those sacks, he was sacked 8 times instead of 4, but didn't throw those interceptions, we would have seen more of J.K. Dobbins and the Gus Bus. The Chargers have dealt with crappier interior O-line play all year. They've won games despite it. I think if Herbert had not handed the defense the ball, handed them points multiple times, the Chargers would have fared a lot better, even if Herbert had been on his backside 9-10 times. I think they still would have won if they had taken sacks instead of picks. I don't know if that's a controversial statement or not.
And from the Justin Herbert perspective, he did not play good. He did not elevate this Chargers team and put them in a position to win the game. But I know you said only 3 of the 4 interceptions were his fault. That the one that went through Ladd McConkey's hands. That is, while it's not a good throw and well over his head, it still went through both of his hands.
He threw it way too hard. He threw a J.J. McCarthy fastball straight through
hands on the ball, you gotta catch it.
Incorrect and wrong.
And then the other interception also went off his receiver's hands.
He also threw that one too hard too.
So I think those are 2 interceptions that you look at and say, not really his fault. And under different circumstances, maybe a defender isn't standing right where the ball is going to, and then they don't get an interception. So I do...
Meet me in the middle here. both those were bad throws, which are thrown too hard. They'll call them half interceptions. You get the half interception, you take one, you take the other, you put them together, you're at 3 again. Three were his fault.
We'll call them not good throws. How about that?
Call them interception-worthy throws. How about that? Interception-worthy throws which resulted in an interception.
They're unlucky interceptions. Can we at least
Yeah, the Chargers were very unlucky to have Justin Herbert throwing the ball for them.
Anyway, not a great performance. He did not elevate the team to win, like Jaden Daniels did in the Commanders game, who we're not covering in this video, but it was not a performance where you were left in awe of how good Justin Herbert is.
I'll tell you someone who had a performance that left me in awe, Jordan Love. Because I was a champion of the sophomore slump going into this year for both him and CJ Stroud. I thought, hey, maybe they're both going to regress a bit. Stroud, I blame his regression more so on his offensive line playing incredibly poorly, getting injured, and him missing his number 2 and number 3 receiver for a large stretch of the year. I'm not putting that on Stroud. I don't really think he got worse. I think his situation got worse. Jordan Love got worse this year. There were long stretches of time where you just had no faith Jordan Love could lead his team. You were praying Josh Jacobs had a big day, because otherwise, if you asked Jordan Love to go out there and win you a football game, he just wouldn't. And that's an insane thing to say about a young quarterback who was getting stuck into the top 10 already, stuck into the top 5 already. He's making $50 million after one good playoff game against a Cowboys defense which stunk. And this performance against the Eagles was the pinnacle of that. He was playing through some injuries. I will acknowledge that. He was dealing with a knee thing he's been dealing with all year, and he had a funny bone bruise on his throwing elbow. That does not excuse no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, none of which you can hand wave and say, oh, that's not his fault like we were trying to do with Justin Herbert. He was dismantled by the Eagles defensive line. He was dismantled by the Eagles coaching staff, and he was dismantled by their secondary. If you want to hold on to faith in Herbert, say, fine, he's going to be a playoff riser, he's going to eventually get it done, he's a talented player, you can do that. This game has to legitimately make you question how bad of a mistake it was to pay Jordan Love all that money as the Packers quarterback. This is the culmination of a really terrible year with his worst game yet.
It was a really bad game from Jordan Love, and the score is not nearly as bad as it should have been in the Eagles' favor because both quarterbacks in this game played bad. Jordan Love, unfortunately for the Packers, just played worse. I mean, the interception he threw over the middle was just straight to the defense, handing the ball to the other team. There's no words you can use to defend Jordan Love's performance in this one. Now, when it comes to his overall poor play and disappointing play in 2024, I do think we can point to maybe a couple of things. In the first game of the season, he gets a knee injury, misses a couple games. Who knows how that was maybe hampering him throughout the year as far as his throwing motion goes, comfortability on the field. That's impossible for us to know. It's certainly not something he's completely spoke on. He dealt with a few nagging injuries. He had the injury to his elbow heading into this game, so that is an element of his season that maybe took back from his performances a little bit. But in this one, the decision making was just not good, where if he just plays half as bad as he did, the Packers potentially win this one with what their defense was doing to Jalen Hurts in the passing game.
With how well Josh Jacobs was playing, he was having about as good of a game as any running back has had against the Eagles. He was fairly efficient. He got in the end zone. Josh Jacobs was doing some work, and it just was completely sabotaged every time by Love. You can also question with Love, okay, this is this guy's second full season as a starter, and he's already getting these constant nagging injuries. Are you confident he's going to be able to physically hold up for the remainder of the contract, let alone the remainder of his career?
Well, he's definitely the starting quarterback next year. This is only his
Malik
second.
Willis was what as a starter again? 2-0?
It was only his second full season as the Packers starting quarterback. So there's
First full season with that $55 million contract.
These are all true things. I think you can't completely write him off yet, but if you're a Packers fan, I think you're certainly justified in feeling a little bit nervous.
I will say I was very pleased with Jordan Love's performance from a Vikings fan perspective because Sam Darnold stunk. His box score does not tell you how terrible he was, his lack of pocket awareness, his wonky arm. He played horrible. The Vikings are going to move off him this offseason. We have the option to look at a quarterback and say, okay, well, we've already got our other guy in building. Thank you so much, Sam Darnold. You can go. We don't have to try and justify around here Sam Darnold stinking the joint up. The Packers are going to be justifying these Jordan Love performances for the next 3 years bare minimum. I look forward to it.
Now, we'll talk about the teams that actually won these games. The Eagles specifically, they are a really talented team. They might have the most talented roster in the NFL. They have the best defense in the NFL. They have 2 top 20, top 15 receivers. They have the best running back in the NFL. They have the best offensive line. But when it comes to the big moments, when it comes to situational football, when you're watching them, they just do not perform, and that's why the score wasn't worse than it actually is. The Bills, on the other hand, in those big moments, they're a team where they get things done. The Chiefs are the same exact way. People keep making fun of the Chiefs because they win close, but they win close because in the biggest moments that matter the most, high leverage situations, Patrick Mahomes gets things done. Jalen Hurts, if it wasn't for Dallas Goedert's big play where he just bullies the Packers defender and gets into the end zone, he has a little over 100 passing yards, and he was completely incompetent this game.
So wait, hold on a second. You're saying the Bills and the Chiefs make plays in moments and step up and win these games, but then you're just going to diminish Dallas Goedert doing exactly that, stepping up in a big moment, making a big boy play, and winning the Eagles the game. You're going to just kind of hand wave that?
This team, from a coaching perspective and a Jalen Hurts perspective, are not consistent in high leverage situations. We do not see Jalen Hurts dissecting defenses, throwing the ball down the field efficiently. And I think when they play a team like the Chiefs, like the Bills, like the Ravens, who if they're able to get to the Super Bowl, or like the Lions, I think we're going to see teams that pass the ball more effectively and in big moments better than the Eagles, and they'll win a game like that. But if this Eagles team just grounds another team into dust, that's how they win. But if they get into a passing game, I don't feel good for them.
I mean, what team can the Eagles not grind into dust? Maybe not the Ravens, maybe not the Chiefs. They're only going to have to play one of those teams. The interior of the Lions defense has been absolutely ripped apart. The Rams, their defensive line, you have a lot of faith in Fisk. I don't have much faith in him holding up against Mekhi Becton and Cam Jurgens on those double teams. They're going to be able to run at will on the remainder of their schedule until they reach the Super Bowl. And if they get in the Super Bowl and they're playing the Bills,
are they your Super Bowl pick?
They're going to run over them too. I will make my predictions week by week. I'll be honest, I think I'm just going to pick the Commanders to win the Super Bowl because I hate every other team in the NFC playoffs.
That's fair.
Besides the Rams, and I can't pick them to win because they beat the Vikings, but I digress. Looking over at the Texans, they are a really interesting matchup for the unbeatable Kansas City Chiefs because last week we diminished Will Anderson and Neal saying, well, Slater and Alt are going to be able to take care of them. They just stunned it inside, had Mario Williams also picking up a few sacks, I believe. The Chiefs have terrible tackle play. They've got some of the worst tackle play in the NFL, certainly the worst of any contending team. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson are going to be on Patrick Mahomes all night. If Mario Williams is also playing at that high level, is shedding blocks, getting involved in the running game, they're not going to be able to pound it up the middle that easily with Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt. It's going to be hard for the Chiefs offense to do anything, and their secondary's got some of the best ball skills of any unit in football, some of the best ball skills of any secondary since the Legion of Boom. They're picking off everything. They're making phenomenal plays on balls. They can absolutely turn Mahomes over 1 or 2 times. I don't know if I'm picking the Texans to win against the Chiefs, but that game is going to be really good.
Well, we saw the matchup already this season between the Texans and the Chiefs, and it was not the most exciting game to watch.
I mean, what Chiefs game is exciting?
I think when we look at this Texans team, I think we underrated their defense in this matchup versus the Chargers. I was not very impressed with their offense at all. Joe Mixon got it going on the ground. Nico Collins made a couple big plays. It was the defense that fueled this win, and we still haven't seen a performance this year. Maybe you want to chalk it up to the fact that they've been dealing with some injuries, and that's why their offense quite hasn't reached the heights that we hoped for them this season, but I just do not trust this Texans offense, and the more bad than good we've seen from them this season to go into Arrowhead and keep up with Patrick Mahomes and an offense that is rested and has only gotten healthier as they've got towards the playoffs.
Keep up feels like a stretch given what we've seen this year, I'll be honest with you. Keep up might not be necessary. Keep up might be 21. This is not the Chiefs offense of yesteryear. You're not keeping up Mahomes, you're outlasting him.
I think playing the Chiefs defense is also different than playing a Chargers defense that had pass rushers that were dealing with nagging injuries.
The Chargers' best players defensively were either their safeties or on the edge play. Khalil Mack played well and Joey Bosa played fairly well. I don't think you can say, oh, they were diminished due to injuries. They look good out there on the field. Bosa less so, but Mack played great. It's going to be hard to do anything with Chris Jones, given how terrible this Texans offensive line is. That is the issue. And how good the Chiefs linebackers are, yeah, that's going to be rough. That's the Chiefs' obvious avenue to victory, just stoning them up the middle, making Nico Collins win against double coverage, which they'll probably throw at him all game given what C.J. Stroud's other weapons look like. I digress, though. I have more faith in the Texans than many do.
I don't think that game's going to be overly competitive.
What, so like it's going to be a one-score game like every other Chiefs game?
It's going to be 10 points difference in
All
spread.
right.
That has been our reaction to the Chargers, Texans, Packers, and Eagles game. Who do you think's going to win their divisional matchup? Let us know down in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe, use code Thicc on Underdog, and we'll see you in the next one.